For over 600 years, one empire dominated a huge part of the world. From its heart in Anatolia, it sprawled across 3 continents, a superpower that shaped history. Its armies made European kings tremble, its culture was a dazzling hub of art and science, and its sultan was seen as nothing less than the shadow of God on earth. This was the Ottoman Empire, and its story is one of seemingly unstoppable success.
But what if I told you that this mighty empire, which lasted for more than 6 centuries, practically vanished in a single lifetime? And what if its dramatic fall held a powerful secret about resilience that could change how you face your own challenges? The story of the Ottoman Empire's end isn't just about a fallen dynasty. It's a lesson in what happens when we stop adapting, and a powerful example of starting over from scratch. This isn't just a history lesson. It's a roadmap for survival.
To understand the fall, you first have to understand the rise. Our story kicks off around the year 1299 with a tribal leader named Osman I. From a tiny state in Anatolia, Osman and the leaders who followed him launched a relentless wave of expansion, swallowing smaller territories and pushing up against the once unbeatable Byzantine Empire. The turning point, the moment that truly shook the world, came in 1453. Sultan Mehmed II, a brilliant and fiercely ambitious young ruler, did the impossible. For 1,000 years, the city of Constantinople was the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, its legendary walls turning back countless sieges. But Mehmed, with overwhelming cannon fire and sheer determination, finally broke through. The fall of Constantinople sent a shockwave across the Christian world and cemented the Ottomans as a global superpower. Mehmed the Conqueror made the city his new capital, renaming it Istanbul. This victory kicked off an age of incredible grandeur. The 16th century, especially under Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, is seen as the empire's golden age. Ruling from 1520 to 1566, Suleiman's reign was the absolute peak of Ottoman power. His armies conquered parts of Hungary and even besieged Vienna, striking fear deep into the heart of Europe. His navy, led by the fearsome Admiral Barbarossa, ruled the Mediterranean, turning it into what many called an Ottoman lake. At its height, the empire was a buzzing multicultural society. It was a center of global trade and a hotspot for arts and sciences. Under Suleiman's funding, the architect Mimar Sinan designed breathtaking mosques and buildings that still define Istanbul's skyline today. The Sultan himself was even a celebrated poet. From the outside, the Ottoman Empire looked like it would last forever, a perfectly tuned machine of conquest and culture.
But even at this peak of glory, the first tiny cracks started to show. And this is our first lesson. Success can be a dangerous sedative. It makes you complacent. In his later years, Suleiman grew tired of running the empire and handed off huge amounts of power to his Grand Vizier. This set a dangerous new standard, creating a power vacuum that future, less talented rulers couldn't handle. His death in 1566 is seen by many historians as the beginning of a long, slow decline. The empire had hit its peak, and when you stop growing, the only way to go is down. The first major military sign of this came in 1683, when a second attempt to take Vienna ended in a crushing defeat, stopping Ottoman expansion into Europe for good. The giant had been stopped. The illusion of invincibility was starting to wear off. The fall of an empire isn't a single event. It's a slow erosion, a death by 1,000 cuts. For the Ottomans, the 17th, 18th, and especially the 19th centuries were a long, painful fight against decay from within and massive pressure from the outside. This is where the real test of resilience starts, not when you're on top, but when you start to lose. The problems were twofold: rot from the inside and sharks circling from the outside. First, the internal rot. The very things that had made the empire strong became anchors holding it back. The military, once the most advanced in the world, failed to keep up. The elite Janissary troops, once the Sultan's loyal bodyguards, turned into a corrupt political force, blocking any attempt at modernization that might threaten their power. While European armies were adopting new technologies and tactics, the Ottomans were stuck fighting 18th century wars with 16th century methods.
Economically, the world changed under the empire's feet. New sea routes to Asia discovered by Europeans meant the old trade routes controlled by the Ottomans were no longer the main game in town. This, plus a flood of silver from the Americas that caused runaway inflation, crippled the Ottoman economy. European merchants were given special privileges called capitulations that allowed them to dominate trade and hollow out local industries. By the mid-19th century, the empire was drowning in debt to European banks, taking out huge loans just to function. By the 1870s, paying back these loans ate up more than half of the empire's entire budget.
Politically, the Sultan's power faded. A line of weaker rulers, often raised in the sheltered world of the palace with no real experience, were easily controlled by court politics. Corruption was everywhere, with government jobs sold to the highest bidder instead of given to the most qualified person. While the empire was getting sick from the inside, the world outside was changing at lightning speed. The second huge problem was a powerful new idea: nationalism. Born out of the French Revolution, the idea that every ethnic group deserved its own country was poison to a multi-ethnic empire like the Ottomans. For centuries, the empire's diversity had been a strength. Now, it was a fatal weakness. Throughout the 19th century, nationalist revolts exploded across the empire's European territories. First the Serbs, then the Greeks won their independence with backing from European powers by the 1830s. The Bulgarians, Romanians, and others soon followed. Each lost territory was another blow to the empire's power and economy. The once mighty conqueror was now being slowly picked apart. It was around this time, in the mid-19th century, that the empire got a humiliating nickname. Tsar Nicholas I of Russia famously called the Ottoman Empire the sick man of Europe. The name stuck. European power started circling like vultures, waiting to carve up the empire's land when it finally collapsed. But here's the next crucial lesson. The Ottomans knew they were in trouble. They knew they were sick, and they desperately tried to find a cure. This era saw a series of ambitious reforms called the Tanzimat, or reorganization, starting in 1839. This was a real effort to modernize the military, streamline the government, create new laws, and introduce the idea of a shared Ottoman citizenship to hold the fractured empire together. The reformers wanted to build a modern state that could compete with the West. They built new schools, reformed the tax system, and even created a new constitution in 1876. But in many ways, it was too little, too late. The reforms were blocked by conservatives and corrupt officials who felt their power was threatened. Plus, it couldn't stop the wave of nationalism. For many ethnic groups, Ottoman citizenship was no replacement for their own independent nation. The failure of the Tanzimat teaches a tough but vital lesson about change. It's not enough to just try to reform. The change has to be deep, real, and fast enough to keep up with the world.
Every long sickness has a final breaking point. For the Ottoman Empire, that point was World War I. In 1914, the Young Turk government made a terrible gamble, joining the war on the side of Germany and the Central Powers. They hoped to win back lost land and break free from the economic grip of Britain and France. It turned out to be a fatal mistake. The war was a total disaster. The empire fought on multiple fronts, from Gallipoli to the Caucasus Mountains against Russia, and in Mesopotamia and Palestine against the British. The battle at Gallipoli was a rare and heroic victory for the Ottomans, where a young officer named Mustafa Kemal made a name for himself. But everywhere else, the empire's armies were crushed, suffering horrific losses. By 1918, the empire was completely broken. It surrendered to the Allies. The winners quickly moved in to occupy its lands. British, French, Italian, and Greek soldiers spread across Anatolia, even taking over the capital, Istanbul. The sick man of Europe was finally on his deathbed. In 1922, the last Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed VI, was kicked out and fled into exile. After more than 600 years, the Ottoman Empire was officially over. And right here,
In this moment of total defeat, complete humiliation, and utter collapse is where the story turns. This is where we find the most powerful lesson about never giving up. Because the story doesn't end with a dead empire, it starts over. The first part of the lesson is a warning. The Ottoman Empire fell because it became a victim of its own success. It held on to old ways that didn't work anymore. It didn't adapt to a changing world, and its reforms weren't deep enough or fast enough to save it. It teaches us that resilience isn't just about being strong, it's about being adaptable. In your own life, clinging to the past just because it used to work is a recipe for disaster. When the world changes, you either change with it or you get left behind.
But the second part of the lesson is one of incredible hope. It's the story of a rebirth. From the ashes of the empire's defeat, a new movement rose up, led by that same officer who became a hero at Gallipoli, Mustafa Kemal. Mustafa Kemal saw the situation clearly. He knew the old empire was dead, and trying to bring it back was pointless. Instead of crying over the past, he decided to fight for a new future. He gathered the remaining Turkish forces and started a national resistance against the occupying armies. What followed was the Turkish War of Independence from 1919 to 1922. Against all odds, Kemal's forces fought to kick the foreign armies out of the Turkish heartland of Anatolia. It was a brutal, desperate war, but it was powered by a new idea. Not a multi-ethnic religious empire, but a modern, independent nation-state for the Turkish people. Kemal and his followers are the ultimate example of resilience. They accepted that their world was over. They'd lost everything, their empire, their power, their status, but they refused to give up. They found the courage to let go of a glorious past to build a completely new future. In 1923, after winning the war and signing a new treaty that recognized their new country's independence, the Grand National Assembly of Turkey officially created the Republic of Turkey, with Mustafa Kemal as its first president. He would later be given the name Ataturk, which means father of the Turks.
The story of the Ottoman Empire's fall is a stark warning about the danger of getting stuck in your ways and failing to adapt. The empire got sick because it thought its past glory would protect its future. It's a lesson we can all use. What got you here won't get you there. But the story doesn't end with the sick man's death. It ends with the birth of a healthy child. The real lesson here isn't in the empire's 600 years of power, but in its fiery collapse and the incredible rebirth that came after. Resilience isn't just about surviving the storm. It's not just about pushing through hardship. Real resilience is about what you do after the storm has passed and everything has been destroyed. It's the courage to look at the wreckage of what you had, accept that it's gone for good, and find the strength to build something new in its place. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk and the Turkish people didn't try to bring back the Ottoman Empire. They built the Republic of Turkey. They turned an ending into a new beginning. So when you face your own defeats, when it feels like your own world is collapsing, remember this story. Remember that even from total failure, a new, different kind of success can rise from the ashes. Sometimes never giving up doesn't mean hanging on to what you have. It means having the guts to let go and start again. If you enjoy learning from the past to build a better future, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories that unpack history's biggest lessons. And let me know in the comments, where in your life could letting go of the old way of doing things lead to a new beginning? Thanks for watching.